Hello and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. Is the Premier League title race back on? We'll get into that very shortly after Manchester City slipped up this weekend. We'll also talk through Liverpool's win over Norwich and the upcoming Leeds United fixture to come on Wednesday. I'm your host, Matt Addison, with Theo, Squires and Richard Garnett, both with me to get stuck into all of those topics. Theo, I'll come to you first. I think we better talk about the title race and what has happened this weekend. With that, of course, we'll come to the actual game itself and Leeds and all the rest of it Liverpool-wise later on. But the main talking point is the Premier League title race. Simple question to start with. Is it back on?
Yeah, of course it's back on. In a few days, we'll hopefully be saying it's only, a 3-point gap? And then, there might be another game in hand looming at the weekend with Liverpool not in Premier League action. But considering 6 weeks ago it looked done and dusted, a 3-horse race become a 1-horse race. This is what we all wanted, to actually get that battle between these two sides. Liverpool and City are the two best sides in England, if not Europe. And we've had a couple of times where, there was the Champions League quarter-final in 17-18. There was the final day shootout in 18-19 between them when they were properly going for right until the end when it mattered most. Since then, we've been robbed of that. We've seen Liverpool storm to Premier League glory as injuries cost City, and then the shoe was on the other foot last year. We've been overdue this, where both teams can actually go for it. And I know it's only February. A lot can happen before we get this showdown between them at the Etihad in April. But we've done a piece today. They could be playing 4 times in a row in April. If you've got the FA Cup semi-finals, the Champions League quarter-finals, it is set up nicely for these two gigantic sides, these great sides, to be going for all these honours and have to get past each other. It's what you want. It's what all the neutrals will want. It's what the TV producers will be wanting as they pick all their fixtures. And it's just exciting. You think last year, Liverpool were having to get excited about playing the lesser sides just to get into a top 4 race. This is what they were missing, a proper title race where they're competing for honours. They've got a cup final at the weekend. And if they just keep winning their games, that trip to the Etihad in April, it's mouthwatering. They've not had many happy visits there in recent years, but when there's going to be so much riding on it, can your nerves take it? And you think at the moment, Liverpool are the side in confidence.
Yeah, 6 points the gap, Richard, with the game in hand. The visit to the Etihad to come, as Theo says. I mean, you just got to be excited, haven't you? We've got to enjoy the next few months. It's going to be intense for Liverpool fans.
This is what being a Liverpool supporter is all about, though, isn't it? You're at the sharp end of winning trophies and competing for silverware, and the fact that they're competing on 4 fronts and who knows, hopefully get a first piece of silverware on Sunday. Supporters are just licking the lips at the prospect of this. Only a few weeks ago, you think the league is something you're not even got an eye on, really, in terms of how invincible Manchester City looked. They just looked like this well-oiled machine that didn't look capable of dropping a point. And all of a sudden, they've dropped a couple against Southampton. And then, the game on Saturday was unbelievable, really. It was such an exciting match, and it showed that they have got vulnerabilities. If you look at they've conceded 3 goals, but if you look at where they've scored the goals from in the game, 1 goal's come from an error from the goalkeeper, and the other one's come from the penalty spot. So for once, someone's found a way of stopping Manchester City from scoring the type of goals that they normally score and have been scoring at will. Pep Guardiola has been often referring to Liverpool in his press conferences, even when he's not really been asked about them. So they do seem to be like a thorn in his side. And I think from a Liverpool perspective now, this is really exciting. And almost, it's like it was only feels like a week ago just talking about, could they do a cup treble? All of a sudden, that almost feels a little bit sidelined just for a moment while the focus shifts back to the Premier League and what looks like it's going to be a really exciting end to the season. So, yeah, it's a great time of the season, a good time to be involved in a title running.
It's quite nice to be the hunter rather than the hunted. Even when City beat Liverpool in 18-19, it wasn't until right at the end of the campaign when they had that game in hand against Leicester that they officially overtook them. I think we were all resigned to the fact that City weren't going to drop any points and that it would have taken a big slip up from them. But Liverpool had been in that position of strength, and you were waiting for City to lose for half a season. and they just won 18 games out of 19, which was an incredible run. It's how good these two sides are. But now it is almost the role reversal of that. City are the side who are at the top, but Liverpool have nothing to lose here. Like, we're sitting here, I think we've got the hope back, we've got the excitement back, knowing Liverpool have got it in their talent they're talented enough to go on a run and to win the league. But at the same time, you wouldn't be surprised if they didn't. If they dropped points, you'd be disappointed, but it's not as though they've failed. Like, the fact that they've made it a title race again, they have got nothing to lose. You either pull off this great win by overtaking City, and it'll be one of their greatest ever title triumphs, or you fall just short against a side who are one of the best the Premier League has ever seen. But to get back in this position and to potentially set up a showdown against City, it's credit to Liverpool, because they did look dead and buried only a few weeks ago.
I think what you said before, Richard, in terms of there being a kind of template for other teams to follow. Obviously, Tottenham did really well to stop City, counter-attack them as well, and got in behind. I think so often when you watch Manchester City, they just score that first goal and you just know that that's basically it. No one's going to get back into them. But does this weekend's game, psychologically more than anything else, just sort of change it a little bit? Not necessarily for City, but maybe for the opponents that they're coming up against.
Well, every time I see City play, they seem to score the same goal. They get the ball in between the centre-back and the full-back, in behind, pull it back from the byline, and one of their several talented players is there to run onto it and smack it into the net. And Tottenham, for once, were a team that stopped them from doing that. Other teams will look at that, and I mean, surely they all must know where that goal comes from, but it's just a case of being able to stop it against such quality opposition, isn't it? But I think certainly Spurs, and let's not forget Spurs had lost the last 3 consecutive league matches. They must have looked at Southampton and thought, well, what did they do right? And now hopefully other teams are going to look at Spurs and say, well, what did Spurs do right in this? And it has kind of just, it's certainly changed my own mindset in terms of the fact that I'm no longer thinking it's absolutely inevitable that Manchester City will win every game that they play in, because that is certainly how it's felt for maybe probably the majority of the season. So I think there is encouraging signs there for other teams now to maybe have a bit more of a go at Manchester City than they thought they could. Or I think the important thing is just being able to stop them scoring first and foremost, isn't it? And then you might get something at the other end. But I think that knock-on effect as well for Liverpool, who obviously still got to go to the Etihad. But knowing that there is pressure on Manchester City now, which there is, and I don't know, maybe it's a slightly different pressure, certainly different to what they had last season. How different it would have been to when the teams went closer in the season before Liverpool actually won it, I'm not too sure. But it's a pressure that they'll have to deal with. They've got to, as Theo said, it's Liverpool who are chasing, City are the chased, and they're going to have to respond to that. I'd still expect them to win most of their games, of course, but knowing how close it could go, and you know, Guardiola, he does feel that tension. He's a very intense character, isn't he? He does feel that tension, and you wonder if any of that transfers to his players. I mean, I guess we'll find out soon enough. But yeah, I feel like City aren't done. You know, a Liverpool game excluded, I feel like City aren't done in terms of the points that they'll drop, as Liverpool probably aren't as well. And that very notion probably makes it all the more tantalising.
Yeah, it'd certainly be interesting to see what Pep Guardiola was like if, as Theo said before, it does transpire that Liverpool play Manchester City 4 times in 18 days. That would certainly make things very interesting, wouldn't it? Just a final point, Theo, before we move on. Obviously, we both mentioned there that we don't expect that both Liverpool and City will win every game, but the maximum number of points that Liverpool can get is 96. Manchester City up there as well, and it's going to be very, very close. But how many do you think it'll take for whoever it is to win the title? How much margin for error is there for Liverpool over this last 13-game period?
Not much. I think we've been saying for a while now that if Liverpool want to win the title, they're just going to have to go on a run like City did when they won 18 out of 19. That's what it would take for them to win the Premier League title. But then teams are going to drop points. It's just with Liverpool and City, when they set such standards, it's impossible to predict where it comes from. But the fact that Liverpool are going on all 4 fronts, which we've not seen them do before, that City will be wanting to win the Champions League, they'll maybe have attentions on the FA Cup. These are big games that are going to be coming one after the other. the squads both sides they've got enough depth there to have fresh legs to rotate and still be strong enough to win these games. But when they are coming Champions League quarter-final, Man City versus Liverpool, Champions League quarter-final, FA Cup semi-final, when it's all that in quick succession, and you can have teams at the bottom of the table who are at the moment in February, we're saying that's an easy 3 points. Well, when they're fighting for their lives at the end of the season, shocks can happen. You've just got to focus on your own results. I know we're all getting excited now because City have lost a game, but Liverpool can't really fall into that mindset. From the very beginning, you just have to win as many of your games as you can and hope it's enough at the end of the season. And the fact that the set standards Liverpool and City have set, it has been 98 points, 99 points, 96 points. It's always been in that region, and it's almost become normal. Like there have been seasons where you'd only need late 70s, early 80s to win the titles. When you think of United's heyday or when Leicester won it, it is just so much higher now. And you can't rely on teams to drop off for you to get enough. You just have to be as consistent as you can, win as many games as you can, and then look at the table in May. But then whenever City drop points, Liverpool get excited, or Liverpool fans will get excited, and I'm sure it'll be the same vice versa. That's what happens when you've got them both spurring each other on like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Liverpool can only take care of their own job, but they did do that, Richard, against Norwich on Saturday. We'll skip over the first 62 minutes or whatever, because that wasn't particularly interesting. But as soon as Thiago Alcantara came on, everything changed.
Yeah, he looked like Dan Marino in his pomp then. I think Thiago, when he came on, he just assumed that quarterback role and started getting Liverpool ticking over a lot quicker than it seemed possible in that first hour of the match. And you know, there is an argument that Norwich may have started to tire after an hour, but I don't think that should take anything away from the influence that he had on the game. He immediately got a grip of it and started to feed in passes that probed that Norwich defence, and ultimately has led to 3 goals. I thought it was a fantastic performance from Thiago. And, you know, there's been some question marks over the various roles that he does in that midfield for Liverpool and what the right balance is. And yeah, in the middle of the park for Jurgen Klopp, but you know, compared to some of the replacements that started the game for him, there's no contest really. And I think there's more to come from Thiago this season. I'm very excited to see it.
Yeah, it was a really good performance from him, wasn't it, Theo? I mean, I know there was a formation change. They brought the extra attacker on, but for me, the game changed purely and simply because of Thiago. And I suppose it probably makes Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Naby Keita, those who were on a little bit earlier on, look even worse as a result. It wasn't a case of them being appalling. It was more a case, for me at least, of Thiago just being on another level.
Yeah, I think it's a few games now where we've seen Jurgen Klopp make the changes and it's just worked. He's seen what the game needed. At Burnley, Liverpool needed to get control of the ball, pass it around more. They needed Thiago. Against Inter Milan, they needed to get stuck in a bit more, wrestle control of it, and have the leaderships of Jordan Henderson with Naby Keita getting forward. They needed Luis Diaz to run at teams. They needed Firmino to drop deeper and win the ball back. And against Norwich, they just needed to calm it down. Klopp said that himself in the press conference. When Norwich scored, you could feel the anxiety around the stadium. It did feel like this could be the day that the title challenge is over. It's a game that you'd expect Liverpool to win. And while they'd had chances, they'd had so many shots, they hadn't really tested Angus Gunn as much as they'd like. There were a couple where he's got down low and tipped away a header from Van Dijk, or Tsimikas should have scored, but you'd expect to see more from Liverpool. On paper, the front three was very exciting, but it didn't quite click. And it took those changes and the formation change for it all to work. And Thiago, he just brought the best out of everyone around him. He could calm it down. He could keep the ball. And it suddenly became not a case of, can Liverpool get a draw here? Of how many are they going to score? And the fact that it happened in such quick succession, the 2 goals, it was electric at Anfield. You were there as well, and you could feel how the atmosphere just rose as soon as those subs came on. It was waiting for the equaliser. Then Mane gets it, and you're waiting for the second. It was just incredible, and it's not an atmosphere you expect to feel against Norwich. It wasn't just Thiago. Him coming on did unleash Henderson, who was brilliant in that second half as well. His pass for Diaz's goal was superb. And bringing on Origi as well, it just made it work for the front three, having them as that 4. having Mane in his natural position on the left, giving Diaz that free roll off Origi, and then just getting Origi to occupy the centre backs, because the big physical centre backs who Norwich have got, and we saw Diaz getting pushed all over the place. Mane was having to drop deep and really couldn't get involved. And while Salah was on the ball when he was wriggling free, he was still getting crowded out a little bit. Origi just gave them something else to focus on, and Liverpool could just unlock the pitch in front of them. Like Origi's run, I think it's gone unnoticed for the second goal, but he completely takes Grant Hanley's attentions away, and that's why Salah can put it in the bottom corner. We know how good Diaz's run for the third was, and Sadio Mane, I swear, for like 4 or 5 years, he's been trying these overhead kicks, and he's been getting closer and closer, and finally he's got one. But yeah, the substitutions again, that's what made the difference to Liverpool. That's why they signed Luis Diaz in January. That's why they've got this strength and depth now. And that's why you've got confidence in Liverpool to suddenly win every game before them. Because when things aren't going their way, they can make those changes and turn the tide. Bit of a disappointment that they've lost Firmino and Jota to injury, but the depth's still there. And they're going to need it over the next few weeks and months.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we hope that Diogo Jota and Roberto Firmino are back as soon as possible, Richard. But the fact that Divock Origi, Takumi Minamino came off the bench, you've still got a front three of Diaz, Mane and Salah. I mean, it just, that for me, more than anything, just underlines how much depth Liverpool have got now. Is you've got two of the first choice players missing, and you don't really notice it.
Oh, make no mistake, this is the strongest Liverpool squad there's ever been, and certainly in my lifetime, and before that, you're going back to 2 substitutes. So it's safe to say it's definitely the strongest squad that Liverpool have ever had. And without that, there's absolutely no way that they can compete on 4 fronts and, potentially get into more cup finals as well. They have to have players of that standard, that quality, interchangeable players that can come in and play within the systems that Klopp trains his starting 11 to play in all the time and do it effectively. And that's exactly what they've done. You've seen that blueprint really with Manchester City and the amazing squad that they've got and how they can just swap and change players. They've got big name players there that are struggling for game time, and it doesn't make any difference because they're still winning games. And all of a sudden, Jurgen Klopp finds himself in a situation where he's had to leave players out of his first team squad that would ordinarily expect to be there. And although, yes, a couple will get back in now because of the injuries to Jota and to Firmino, but for some of those players, it's tough now. And we're talking about decent footballers. They just can't seem to be able to force their way into that starting even onto the bench rather than just the starting 11. And that is a really good headache for Jurgen Klopp to have, because all it's doing now is raising the competitive levels of all the players in his team, and you're going to need all of them going into these games now, because when you get to this business end, you think, you look at the fixture list, you think, how many games have we got left, and you look at how many league games are left. But of course, any advancement in the Champions League or the FA Cup is going to mean more games, and every single one of those players is going to have a role to play. None less significant than Divock Origi, whose pedigree for a big goal knows no bounds, and who would bet against him coming up with some sort of significant goal in the next couple of months? Certainly not me.
Yeah, you'd certainly like to hope there's at least one more left for Divock Origi before his contract expires. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Let's go more than one. You can get one in Sunday. You can have a few more.
One per Champions League round, then.
Needs to justify that statue he's going to get at the end, doesn't he? So
yeah, I believe Kiefer O'Neill's still constructing that, so hopefully it's done by the end of the season. Theo, just in terms of the front line and the options that we've got, I mean, Luis Diaz, Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah all on the score sheet this weekend. I mean, how important do you think that was, given that Jota and obviously Firmino are out now for a little while? It can't have been a bad thing, can it, for Luis Diaz to get himself off the mark?
No, it can't. Klopp was asked in the press conference about that. I think it was about his favourite Mohamed Salah goal out of the 150, and he used his answer to turn it into, hopefully Diaz can use his first goal to go and get 150 himself in the next 3-4 years. It's a testament to Diaz and his quality that he's come into a new league, a new country, when the weather's as vile as it is and completely out of his comfort zone. And he looks like he's a Liverpool player from the off. He's not needed that time to settle. And his performance against Norwich was probably one of his worst since we've seen so far, yet he still ended it with a goal to his name. He just looks so talented. You can see why the management are so excited about him. And then Mohamed Salah, he scores every week. He's 150 now. He's 25 for the season. You run out of things to say about him. It's just such a well-taken goal from him. He could have easily just given it to one of his teammates either side of him to give them the finish, but he's got that hunger, doesn't he? He knows the keeper's out of position. He knows there's an open goal somewhere that he's just got to find the space. And sure enough, he found the space, found the bottom corner. And Mane, it's been an interesting season for him. Best player at Cup of Nations, wasn't he? He scores the winner in the shootout. But he was on a little bit of a goal drought before that tournament. I know he scored for Liverpool. I think it was in his last appearance against Chelsea before he went away. But he's not had it as easy in front of goal as he'd like. So for him to get this overhead kick, it was a great finish from him. And you still look at the charts, he's still fourth leading goal scorer in the Premier League with Sterling third, Jota second, Salah first. He's still doing the business. You need them to get goals. If you look at Origi's form this season, I think, was it Norwich was his first appearance since AC Milan. He'd scored in that game. He'd scored in Wolves before that. So he's actually got a decent return for goals to game. Minamino's the same, even though he's not getting opportunities as much as he'd like. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, he was scoring goals when he's in that front three. It's quite remarkable that you can lose Jota. And we saw the loss of Jota, how much of an impact that had last year. You take him out now and it's not as painful as it would have been, because even the players who aren't playing as much as they would like, when they do get the minutes, they do score the goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick word as well for Joe Gomez, Richard, who obviously came in for Trent Alexander-Arnold. Never going to be the exact same right back that Trent is. That would be pretty much impossible. But what did you make of him, of course, on his first Premier League start of this season?
It's been a bit difficult for Joe Gomez, hasn't it? I mean, when we talk about this increasing competition for places, he's probably been a bit the fall guy in that he's been pushed out of his favoured centre-back position. And let's not forget, this is a player who partnered Virgil van Dijk in a title-winning campaign, and all of a sudden finds himself sort of fourth choice for that position, and now acting as a deputy for Trent Alexander-Arnold, possibly the best right back in the world, certainly going forward. He's going to bring different qualities to the game. I think he did okay, but I don't know, is it always going to be unfair that anyone who ever plays fullback for Liverpool is going to be compared to Alexander-Arnold masquerading down that wing and putting in sensational crosses? Of course, Gomez's defensive side to his game is stronger than Trent's, and he'll still have a role to play. But I feel a little bit sorry for him. It's going to be difficult for him. He looks like a bit heavier now. He looks a bit stockier than he was a couple of years back, and whether that's built more for a centre back, I think, than a right back. So I don't see any sort of long term future for Gomez in that position. But if anything happens to Trent, you need someone to fill in, and he's more than capable of doing that. And I know from that perspective, he certainly won't let anyone down.
Yeah, not an easy game to judge him on, is it? But I'm sure he's probably just glad to get minutes anywhere on the pitch at the moment. But anyway, that'll do, I think, for Norwich. Of course, that turnaround against them won't mean anything unless Liverpool can get the 3 points against Leeds on Wednesday. So we should probably talk a little bit about that as well. We'll come to our team selections and match predictions very shortly. But just first and foremost, Theo, on Leeds, they've had an odd season themselves. I watched them against Manchester United this weekend. They did okay in patches, but still lost. They got absolutely battered by Everton last weekend as well. I mean, ultimately, Liverpool will have to work hard because that's a given in any game, not least against a Leeds team under Marcelo Bielsa. But if they do and they match what Leeds do, they probably should win this one quite comfortably.
Yeah, they should. It has been difficult for Leeds, but you've got to look at their injury list. Like, they were good last year, and they had Bamford up front scoring every week. And I can't remember when he last played, as he had like one game in months, and then he got injured or he got a setback again and that. So you've taken away their top goal scorer there. Calvin Phillips, he's so key to how they play. He's out for a while as well. They've just lost key players, and when you think it's so important to how they play, like Phillips is that holding midfielder, unleash the rest of the team. He was their Pirlo, if you like. He's had those comparisons, hasn't he? He was their dictator, organising everything. And it's just, they don't have the quality to replace him. The squad hasn't been big enough to replace him. And it's why they've gone from looking like they might sneak into Europe last year to almost being in a relegation battle this year. But that would happen for 18 teams in the Premier League. If you took out their two best players, you'd watch them just suddenly drop down that table. But they've still got talent there. Like, we know how good Rafinha is. That's why fans get excited with the fact that he gets linked with Liverpool. Jack Harrison is a pretty solid player as well. Rodrigo was a bit of a fluky finish from him against the United from the cross. Dan James, he's have to play up front, isn't he, when he's just this quick winger. They've still got talented players there who can cause Liverpool problems, getting behind the defence. James especially, like he's rapid, and we know Liverpool like to play this higher line, but if they get one of those timed runs wrong, then James is going to be one-on-one, and that can cause them problems. They're an entertaining side to watch, but you've just got to rely on Liverpool being at their best and being able to get the job done. They've done it against better sides than Leeds, so you'd think they've got enough about them. Just depends how many changes we see. There was 7 against Norwich, and you could tell there were 7 against Norwich for that first hour. Liverpool will need to start quickly, because Leeds, when they have got that crowd behind them, when they're on form, they're a difficult side. It'll help that it's at Anfield. I just hope the League Cup final is not too much of a distraction. They've got players in there that can cause problems. There's a reason why Bielsa is so highly rated as this godfather of football management. It just hasn't happened for him because of all these injuries, but there will come a stage where they will start picking up points, where they will get wins. Against Solskjaer's United, they probably would have won on Sunday.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Just before we move on to our team selections then, Richard, I wanted to ask you about Rafinha, obviously a player that Theo mentions there. Thiago and Fabinho sparked a bit of conversation around him with their trip to Ellen Road this weekend. I'm sure that was nothing to do with that. I know Thiago is very good friends with Rodrigo, the lead striker, so I'm sure that's probably more likely to be the explanation. But is Rafinha a player that you'd be happy for Liverpool to be looking at? I know he's a very talented and very highly sought after player all across Europe, in fact.
Yeah, I know Leeds fans rate him very highly, and he's an exciting player. And I don't think he would look out of place on a Liverpool side. I just wonder if it's what they actually need, though. You know what I mean? If you look at the other players that they've got available at their disposal now, or the firepower that they've got up top there, I suppose some of it comes down to what the long-term futures of the likes of Salah and Mane are. If they secure Salah on a new contract, I think you could probably put that one to bed, really. But I don't think it harms to keep that option open, certainly at the moment, until the long-term futures of the likes of Salah and Mane are finalised. But yeah, he's an exciting player, and we'll look forward to. We look forward to seeing what he can do on Wednesday. Hopefully, he's not too good. But yeah, he's certainly one to watch. I also like Joe Gelhardt at Leeds as well. I think he's a bit younger, but and a Liverpool-born player as well, of course. But I think he's an exciting prospect, and he'll be one to watch as well. He's been popular with the Leeds supporters since he's broken into the first team. He might not have quite have set the world alight as much as certain other players, but he'll be one to watch as well. But yeah, Rafinha, good, but might not need necessarily what Liverpool need.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there, to be honest. I think if Mohamed Salah stays, he's going to struggle to get in the team ahead of him, isn't he? But be interesting to see actually whether he plays
I'm not quite so
all.
sure, you know. I'm not sure it's as reliant on Salah staying on going. Like the fact they've brought in Diaz, they've brought in Jota, there is this clear plan in place for the front three and for the future of the front three. And we've seen before, Liverpool aren't strangers to signing the successor while keeping the current player around. It happened with Thiago and Ronaldo. It happens now with Diaz and Jota. Salah, Mane, Firmino, they could leave in 2023. They could leave in the summer if a good offer comes in, or they could sign good contracts. I think Liverpool now want that strength and depth. Like the fact that they've got these natural successors for 2 of the front 3 now, it's not beyond the realms of possibility for him to have a third. Whether it's Rafinha, I don't know. I know there were links with Ajax's Anthony over the weekend. Did ask the club about this, and they're a bit evasive, saying that can't really comment on it, but they imagine he's a player that a lot of clubs are looking at, so it's not exactly knocking it down entirely. But the interest in Bowen and Rafinha that we know is publicised predates the signing of Diaz. That was in the summer, and the fact that they've still gone for Diaz, that they still want this depth, they still want these players that they can alternate with. Like Salah could just go up front as he gets older. It helps to have these options. Like we're not completely writing off Mane now because Diaz is in, because you can rotate them around. And it's also interesting with Rafinha, if you actually look at the number of players Klopp signed after they've done business against Liverpool, like Van Dijk's record with Southampton against Liverpool was superb. Like they knocked them out in League Cup semi-finals, they got victories, they got clean sheets. Mane, I think we'll remember him terrorising Liverpool in one game at St Mary's. Gio Wijnaldum actually got a goal and assist in one and drew with Newcastle against them. Oxlade-Chamberlain scored for Arsenal against them. And there's so many. You can think of Minamino, Diaz, Ragnar Klavan. You can just go through so many of the squad they've just signed after they've done the business against them the year before. Rafinha might not be the next name to join that list, but it always helps to have that first-hand look at this Anfield audition that he's about to get, and Jared Bowen will get himself in a couple of weeks' time when West Ham come to town.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he starts, actually, because he was taken off at half-time, wasn't he, at Goodison, and then didn't start against Manchester United. So I suppose you could say maybe he's due a start and he's been well-rested to put in a good audition. But we shall see. What we can do is predict, obviously, our Liverpool teams for the game. We know that Addison will be in goal. Richard, I'll come to you first. Do you want to talk us through your back four? I suspect there could probably be a couple more changes compared to the Norwich game.
I haven't changed it much, to be honest with you. And the reason for that is because I fancy Andy Robertson to play in the final, and therefore Tsimikas stays at left back for this game for me. And I would stick with Van Dijk and Matip in the middle, and we'll probably bring Trent in on the right hand side just for this match, just to let him get a feel for it ahead of the final, which he'll inevitably start. So my back four's Trent, Matip, Van Dijk, and Tsimikas.
Interesting. I'm a couple of players different. I've gone for Trent and Van Dijk, but I bring Robertson back in and go for Ibrahim Konate as well. I think there's a good chance that Joel Matip is rested for Sunday. But Theo, who are you more in agreement with? How many changes is it for you?
I'd imagine both fullbacks come back in. I think we said on the pod last week we expected one of them to be rested against Leeds and one of them to be rested against Norwich, and Jurgen Klopp did the curveball by resting them both completely. Just seems odd to take them both out. Like, these are athletes, they play most weeks. Yeah, you can protect them against a possible injury, but they'll want to play in these games. They'll want to get these assists, clean sheets. There was a piece with Trent in the programme when he was saying how disappointed he was that he didn't get more assists when Salah was away at the Cup of Nations, because he wants to be leading that assist chart quite comfortably. So I'd expect both fullbacks to come back in. It would be a surprise if they weren't, for sure. At centre-back, I think Van Dijk's probably one of only, two players that you don't rotate when he's available, when he's fit and everything. So you'd expect Van Dijk to start. And then it's just who's starting for you at Wembley, because you imagine you give them the night off here. I can see the argument for Matip. Like, it'd be a big week for him if you put him in 3 times in a week when you've got that final. I wonder if there's a temptation to give Joe Gomez another start and to let him actually play at centre-back. I think he's only had 1 minute in the Premier League at centre-back this year, and that was in a back 5 when Robertson had been sent off already against Tottenham. But at the same time, he does seem way down the pecking order. So I think I'm leaning towards Matip's in the Cup final. Konate starts this one, like you said, Matt.
Yeah, I wouldn't be against Joe Gomez either, to be honest. I think it'd be nice for him to get some minutes in his proper position. Theo, I'll stick with you for the midfield. Again, probably a couple of changes. I'll tell you mine first. In fact, I'll go for Thiago, Fabinho, and then Harvey Elliott, which is, I believe, the midfield 3 that started against Leeds in the reverse fixture.
It is, and it's the trio that started at the San Siro as well, isn't it, last week? I did our starting 11 changes pieces for this morning, and that was the midfield I had down for it. Those 3. It's a bit harsh on some players. I think you protect Jordan Henderson for this one, don't you? You've got your 2 number 6s, you rotate them. Harvey Elliott, it feels like he has a little bit of a point to prove against Leeds. It'll be his first Premier League start since he dislocated his ankle against them. And Thiago, now he's so important when he's fit, he feels like it'll be a natural for him to come in. But then at the same time, with his injury record, maybe he is one you want to protect for the Cup final, because I'd much rather see him fit and starting against Chelsea than I would against Leeds. There are other options there, of course. James Milner, would you put him in against his former club? You have to wonder what Curtis Jones would be thinking if he's not on the bench for this one. Like, he started against, was it the Leicester game when they beat 1-2-0, and he's not been in a squad since. This feels like it is a game where you would want to maybe reward him and go, you've not been forgotten. But at the same time, when they've got so many options there, it is hard to find a place for him. So I'd lean towards the three that you've said, Thiago, Elliott and Fabinho. But at the same time, Thiago would be surprised if he was on the bench and it was a Milner or a Keita.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see Curtis Jones at least back on the bench, wouldn't it, for this one? Richard, I'll come to you for the midfield as well. I think it would certainly help, Liverpool in terms of being able to control a game against Leeds if you have Thiago in there. But at the same time, I can see the argument as well that you really do not want him to be picking up a little injury.
Yeah, I'm wary of there being too many changes, to be honest with you, because this is still a very important game that Liverpool urgently need to win. But I do think that Thiago would probably be given a rest, and I would agree with Theo that you'd probably step on the side of the caution with Jordan Henderson as well. I have got a slightly different midfield though in terms of the options to come in, and I could see James Milner actually coming in and doing a job here in front of the back four with support from maybe Naby Keita and due to his likelihood of not starting in the League Cup final, Harvey Elliott as well in that midfield as well. So a bit of a different look to my midfield with the of course with the insurance of having been able to make a few changes from the bench if things aren't working out as they didn't against Norwich and to a certain extent Inter Milan with that starting team. But yeah, I'll go with Milner, Keita and Elliott.
Interesting. Theo, we'll come to you for the attack, even with a couple of injuries, as we mentioned before. Still a couple of options. Are you sticking with the same or bringing in one or two of those fringe players?
I'm not sticking with the same just because I didn't think it clicked. It didn't work until they had the fourth forward and they changed formation and they had Mane back on the left with Diaz through the middle. Salah, I could see the sense in resting him with one eye on the cup final. Like, he's one of the few players that rarely is rested. But at the same time, it's Mohamed Salah. You don't rest him. So maybe he's the one that keeps his place. I'd like to see Origi through the middle. I think he works better as that central striker. There is an argument that you put Minamino there or Oxlade-Chamberlain there, but he's the natural fit ahead of them. He seems to be more of a threat. And then it's Mane or Diaz. If you start Diaz, it's because you're resting Mane for the final, but then you might want Mane to play into form, take him off on the hour mark, and then you've got him for the final anyway. I'd lean more towards Mane because I know they are still finding a way to feed Diaz into this side, aren't they? They're taking their time with him. They'll give him the odd start, then they'll put him on the bench for the next one. He's still adapting to English football. So yeah, Mane, Origi and Salah.
Yeah, I thought Diaz looked quite tired actually until he got that goal and then suddenly looked all rejuvenated again. But be interesting to see what they do with him. I'd be tempted actually to bring Minamino and Origi in and give both Mane and Diaz a bit of a rest, maybe bring them on for the last half an hour. But possibly if I had to choose between one or the other, maybe Mane on the left and Minamino through the middle. But Richard, do you want to finish us off with your front three?
Yeah, I'd start with Salah. I can't see him being left out, to be honest with you. I think he'll play. I would agree that Origi down the middle is the way to go, and I'd feel confident of playing him in that position. He's despite the lack of games that he gets now, he's still a player that can be trusted, I think, to deliver when called upon. And I think we can safely say he's not going to start the League Cup final, so this is his chance to shine. So that just leaves you that position on the left there, Mane or Diaz for me. And again, I think Mane will start the final. So I think on this occasion, although he did say he does look a little bit tired against Norwich before his goal, I think on the back of the confidence of that goal, he might get another start against Leeds on Wednesday. Whether he'll play the full game or not, I suspect not. But I'll go with Salah, Origi and Diaz.
Yeah, good stuff. Should be enough, hopefully, to get Liverpool a win. Just before we go, we'll do our match predictions. I'm going to go 2-0 to Liverpool, I think. Theo, do you want to talk us through how you think it might go?
There's going to be changes, so I expect Liverpool to concede, but I expect them to have enough to win 3-1.
Good stuff. Richard?
The risk of being a bit boring, I'm going to completely agree with Theo. I see it exactly the same way. I've got a feeling they're not going to keep a clean sheet, but they should have enough to breach that Leeds defence, and I would also say 3-1.
Yeah, well, any kind of win at this stage of the season, as long as Liverpool keep winning, will be absolutely fine. Plenty of build-up and reaction, of course, to come in all of the usual places. But from all of us here on the Blood Red podcast, that's all we've got time for. It's goodbye for now.